to agree. Okay, so I'm recording this because we do like to make this accessible to people who are unable to attend whenever it is that we do it. And this particular talk is something that most tutors ask about at some point. And sometimes we do a good job of explaining about testing, and sometimes we don't do as good a job. Hopefully I'll do a decent job tonight, and you will have some sense of what's going on. Please feel free to stop me at any point and ask me questions if what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I've got up here to share. All right, there we go. So you're all aware, if you're meeting with a student, that we do test our students prior to them starting our program, and then at various points while they're with us. And I want to just try to take some of the mysteries out of that process for you. See if there we go. So we test for a variety of reasons. And you probably know some of these. We do it to select appropriate levels and materials for students, to place them into existing groups and classes. We also do it to determine if their needs fit our program. Not everybody can be helped by Literacy Pittsburgh. We don't have specialist volunteers generally who can cope with significant learning differences. Most of our tutors have a general education. They have a college degree because that's what the state asks for, but we don't have any specific high-level training that we give you. We test our students to fulfill federal and state grant funding requirements. We do it to satisfy donors that our work is beneficial. And we do it, most importantly, from the student's point of view and from your point of view as a tutor, to assess their progress. And we always do a pre-test before someone starts the program. And then we generally test at least once more during the year. And I think I've got the timing in here later, but in case I don't, let me say, no, I'm sure it's in there, but let me say it anyway. We have to test each year at least once. So if a student continues with us and they start in August of this year, we'll have to test them again sometime between February and July of next year, if they're going to continue with us the following year. And that's because our year begins July 1st. So we have to retest everybody within a specific time frame before the beginning of that year, if they're continuing. It's complicated, and our coordinators sometimes learn this stuff as well. In fact, before I go any further, we have some newer coordinators on this call. And I know we don't all know each other. So let me just stop and see where everybody is from, and so tell us your first name, the area you tutor in, and whether you're tutoring ABE or ESL students, okay? But I'm gonna start, before I go to the tutors, with the coordinators who are on board. I'm Lisa Morse. I am a lead coordinator. I work in the Pittsburgh East area, which started out as the east end of Pittsburgh, Shady Side, and then expanded to include what used to be the east suburbs area. So my area now goes all the way out to Penn Hills and Monroeville. It's very extensive. I don't know the outlying areas as well as I know Shady Side, but I am nominally in charge of them. One of my colleagues two of my colleagues are here. Leah, you've been around a little bit longer than Katie, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself first.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leah Patterson, and I am the program coordinator for the North Side area, but it also includes part of the North Hills, as well as Sewickley, and the Manchester area. My office is in the Bidwell Training Center. So we have a brand new partnership with them where we support and help students that are trying to enter into Bidwell Training Center, but need support or help with math and reading as part of their assessment to get into their various programs. So I'm glad to be here tonight, and thank you all for everything that you do for our students.
So Leah's students often have taken, if they come through Bidwell, they've also done testing for Bidwell, correct, Leah?
Yes, correct. So Bidwell has their own assessment. We also administer the TABE test that Lisa spoke of for pre and post testing. So we keep our internal record of what levels they perform on, as well as they are administered the Bidwell assessment, which is different from TABE. And once upon completion of our classes, whether it be reading or math or both, they are then retested on the Bidwell assessment.
Thank you. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie, and I am the new program coordinator for the North Hills area. This is actually my very first week at Bidwell, at Literacy Pittsburgh. Got to remember where I work. It's only my third day so far, so I'm learning a lot. I'm really excited to be here and meeting some of the fantastic tutors. If any of you are in the North Hills area, please let me know as you introduce yourselves, and I'm looking forward to working with you all going forward.
So just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to call names out, okay? I'm sorry, but I have a list, and that way I won't miss anybody, hopefully. So Kelly, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Kelly Stasic, and I live and work in Baldwin. I think that's called the South Hills area. Miguel is my supervisor. I just joined Literacy Pittsburgh right like the month before everything got shut down. And at the time, I was also a Head Start teacher, still teaching Head Start. So I chose not to do anything online because I was teaching 3, 4, and 5-year-olds online. So I just got back to it this summer. So I'm really kind of like a newbie. And I have 2 students doing the ABE.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I think Miguel's area, for some reason, that is Jefferson Hills. Even though, yes, I think you're south of the city, but
yes,
but that's what we call Miguel's area. So great. Thank you very much.
Good. I'm writing that down so I remember it.
It doesn't matter to you. It only matters to us. Paul, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Paul Battisti. And I'm a tutor in the South Hills, Mount Lebanon area. And it's been about 2 years now for me. I didn't begin right away with the COVID shutdown to go online. I balked, I held back, and finally it became pretty obvious that was the only way to go. So I've been doing that pretty solid for about 1.5 years now.
What kind of students do you work with, Paul?
My students are both ESL.
Okay, thank you. Roberta.
Hi, I'm from the north side. I live in Observatory Hill, but my student is in the north side. She's from El Salvador, so I'm in the ESL program. And we were doing twice a week pretty well until COVID came. And then I hadn't seen my student for a long period of time. And she came back, and she doesn't have a computer, so we have some issues. So we do everything on WhatsApp, which is a real joy. And I try to get her to come back to the library since it's now open, but she prefers doing it on WhatsApp.
I want to simply acknowledge and thank you again, Roberta, for sticking through it. WhatsApp is okay. It's better than nothing. Right?
Yes.
Better than nothing, but
Yes.
it isn't ideal for by any means. So
Right.
thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
And is that, Leah, do you know, is Roberta yours or is she Katie's? Anybody know?
I belong to Leah.
You belong to Leah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I get all the information from Leah. Yes.
Good. Then Leah might be able to pull strings. We may have some more devices available soon.
Mhm.
Yes,
Along that.
yes, Roberta, I'll definitely reach out to you. It was
Okay.
so funny. A couple of months ago, I felt so bad. I met my tutors. I was running around dropping the devices off to people's homes for a long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can check into it certainly for you if that will be of assistance.
Okay,
And nice
thank you.
meeting you. I don't get to see some people
That's right.
because of the circumstances and still doing some things remote. So nice to see you, Roberta.
Okay, Leah.
Yeah, it's always nice when we can actually meet people. I used to do a lot of that, and that's something that's become really hard for me. Okay, let's see. Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Logan. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. I teach English as a second language. Laurel is my coordinator. I've never had a chance to meet her, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to sound like I'm doing a promo for it, but this is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. When I started doing it, I met with my students down at the Andrew Carnegie Free Library in Carnegie. And I had someone from Syria and then someone from Brazil, and then we got more and more. And it kind of turned out every time a woman joined our group, she got pregnant. So we always felt we had to warn anyone that became part of our group just to prepare themselves. So yes, and we've been Zooming because now with all of the little children that they have, it's really difficult for us to be back together. If we're Zooming, the kids are at home and they can play with their toys. I mean, I really prefer being face-to-face with them, but for right now, this is working out well.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I think we all understand there are benefits and negative things as well to this. And it's really clear that for some students, it's more positive than negative.
Mhm.
So, Parth, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry I was driving and I got disconnected.
Oh, it's okay. Tell us who you are and who you work with.
That's why you don't see. Yes, my name is Bill. I'm working with Literacy Pittsburgh after my training about 2 years ago in Oakland, which was very useful.
So Parth, you're breaking up. I'm just going to summarize.
Staff and the director and everybody. I started teaching yes, go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry, Parth, you're just breaking up so badly. I think I'm just going to mute you if that's all right. Yeah. So Parth is in my area. He's working with a particular student, and of course, right now I can't remember who. If it's I think it's an ESL student, but I'm not sure. And he has been with us for about 2 years now. Let's see who's next. How come you guys are moving around? My list is not the same. Kathy, you just joined us. Kathy Lewis.
Hi.
Tell us who you are, where you.
Yes, my name's Kathy Lewis. I'm in the East End, so Lisa is my coordinator. I've been with Literacy Pittsburgh for about 3.5 years, and I work with ESL students.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Nancy.
Hi, everyone. My husband and I moved to Pittsburgh actually during the pandemic the summer of 2020. And I had done a lot of volunteer work in New Jersey, where we moved from, and it took me a while to find Literacy Pittsburgh. And I was happy that I did, because I did do some tutoring of ESL students in New Jersey for about a year before we actually moved. And I guess I would probably be tutoring in the Bloomfield area, or maybe East Liberty. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to come to grips with all the neighborhoods,
It's okay, Nancy.
here. So, but I think, and I said, I do have some experience with ESL, and I believe that's probably what I'd be tutoring someone, an ESL student again here.
Yes, I think I've matched you with an ESL student and hoping to get that off the ground soon. Okay, let's see. Roberta, you introduced yourself. Paul introduced himself. Kathy. Okay, Emily, would you tell us who you're working with?
Hi, my name's Emily. I work out of the Squirrel Hill area, and I do ESL. I've been doing it for about 4.5 years, I think.
Yep. Let's see. All right, let's see. Benjamin.
Hey guys, I am Ben. I have been doing ESL tutoring with these 2 students now. I've been doing it for maybe a little over 3 years. If I look young, it's because I am. You mentioned something about having to have a college degree to do ESL tutoring. You do not. You have to be pursuing one. First week of freshman year at Pitt, started tutoring with Literacy Pittsburgh, been going ever since. I'm in Squirrel Hill in Oakland, so my kind of coordinator is Usama. And Katie, if I'm not mistaken, you had a PhD in Latin American Studies. I was super excited when I read your bio. I'm interested in similar things. And this is the first hour I've ever been able to make one of these tutor talks, and it was the perfect theme because this whole testing is an enigma to me. So I'm so glad this is the one I was able to make. So thank you for having me.
Well, Ben, I'm excited to see you. I was on campus last week doing a volunteer fair. Yeah. Ran into a few fresh people who I tried to encourage to wait a little bit before they signed up for training, just until they sort of got their feet wet, because I know we all have excellent intentions, but freshman year is kind of hard for a lot of people. But
that was the warning. They said it's a big commitment. I said I'm ready for it, and I was. So
you certainly were. If it's your 3rd year and you're still doing it, kudos to you. That's great. Okay, let's see. Jacqueline.
ABE, South Side, and West End.
Okay, thank you. Mona.
Hi, everybody. And Ben, good for you. Happy to hear that. I live in North Fayette. I work under Katie's group, and I am currently working with my 4th student, except I work with the citizenship students.
Great. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the special testing that we do for citizenship students that is required by our USCIS grant, but we also have to test citizenship students on speaking and listening. So they do that as well.
Correct.
Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself? Kathy Holter.
Okay, I'm Kathy, and I was working with GED math students at the Family Literacy Center in, let's see, I guess it's officially in Baldwin. So that was part of Jefferson Hills, and the class basically got transferred and went online without me. And so I have not been active for 1.5 years. And I look at the caseload, and I honestly don't see, considering that family literacy meant childcare, I don't really see that's going to come back like next month or anything. But I was interested in this topic. I also was interested in the discussion of GED, which, and this, as well as this one, I wish that I had known that before I started teaching.
Yeah, okay. Were you able to catch the GED one? Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I was gonna say, all of these, we try to record. Yes, I'm recording, good. We try to record and then post onto Literacy Pittsburgh Tutor YouTube channel. So if you missed something, you can always go back there and check it out. Did I skip anybody? Oh, Susan, I'm sorry. Susan, I saw you. I acknowledged you, but I forgot you. Go ahead.
We spoke, it's fine. So Katie is my new coordinator. Nice to meet you. And I have 3 ESL students. Basically, one of them says she wants to become a citizen. So I just got those materials today. But she has a long way to go on her English. So I'll count her in the ESL camp. And I'm in the North Hills, almost to the Butler County line.
Okay, you're far out then.
Yeah, but my students, one's in Sewickley, one's in Wexford, and one is on the south side.
Oh, yeah, well, right. We're virtual. Most of us are virtual, and so they can be anywhere. Right. Okay. Did I now get everybody? Thank you for introducing yourselves. I think that the information I'm going to share tonight will be helpful to you. As I started to say before, if you have any questions that I don't address, please stop me. We give all our students a test, and we basically divide them up by native speakers of English and non-native English speakers. Non-native English speakers are primarily given first the best plus, which is a speaking and listening test. And then other testing may follow. Native speakers are assessed using the TABE. And I'm going to talk about both of these in a little bit more detail. Let's be honest, in a lot more detail. And I may mention a few other things as well. Okay, so let's start with the ESL students. During the enrollment interview, students will indicate if they're non-native English speakers. Sometimes they sign up with us specifically saying they want ESL lessons. Sometimes they don't. If we do have non-native English speakers who come to us and say they want their GED, if they can say this well enough, we may test them as if they are native English speakers, right? And that can possibly cause issues later on. However, in general, ESL non-native English speakers are tested with the best plus first. And then if they do really well at that, or if we need a second test on them, we'll have them do a simplified reading and writing test called the best literacy. So those are the primary tests for ESL students. The best plus, BEST stands for Basic English Skills Test. It's a national assessment of oral English proficiency. Coordinators are trained on this on a multi-day training. We have to be retrained every year, recalibrated. This isn't just a fly-by-night, I talk to you and I guess that you're at this level. It's actually a fairly major test. It was developed by the Center for Applied Linguistics, which is CAL. We're on version 2.0. Please God, start releasing version 3.0 because 2016 was a long time ago now. It was intended and does assess interpersonal communication using everyday English. It is computerized and adaptive. So when I give it, I have to log into the program and it gives me the prompts. And I ask the prompts to the student and the student responds to those prompts and I score them. And then the computer chooses the next question. And based on how they answer a series of questions, they will get either more difficult or more simplistic questions to answer. So, it's a fairly sophisticated test. It is one-on-one. Until the pandemic, it was only available in person. It wasn't until maybe June of last year that we were allowed to give it online at all. And that was only because of COVID, and it still took the state a while to change their rules. It is given virtually. The person does need to have some video access. I prefer it. I think we all prefer it if we can see them while they're taking the test. But they have to be able to see what we need to show them, because from time to time there are picture questions that we have to ask, and they have to be able to see the pictures or they can't answer them. So Best Plus measures 3 areas of speaking and listening. The first one is comprehension, and that really is how well does the student understand the question that we ask or the setup that they're given. The second one is language complexity. How well was the student able to organize and elaborate their response? Maybe they used more complex grammar structures and went into more detail. And then the third area we measure is communication, which includes things like pronunciation, okay? How well does the student convey their meaning? You can see there's a lot of things to think about, and we have to think about all of these things simultaneously when we're giving this test. So I'm going to just quickly go through the scales with you. Each area that we score in has a slightly different scale. So for comprehension, if somebody understands and answers appropriately, they get a 2. That appropriate answer could be a 1-word answer. Do you go to the park? Yes, that's fine, right? If we have to repeat the question, but they understand it then and they answer it, they get a 1. If they don't answer the question directly, they still can get a 1. If they completely don't understand, or they can't answer, or they shrug their shoulders, or they answer in some language other than English, they get a 0. Language complexity has a scale of 4. I have to say, I think I've given a 4 once in my 5 years here. That's really something that even native speakers of English wouldn't respond with an essay-like response to most of these questions. They're just not that interesting, right? You just aren't going to be prepared to speak that way. But I've had a couple people who have done that. Occasionally I get 3s. These are detailed, elaborate answers that are more complex. You know, they qualify themselves, they use prepositions, they explain when and how, and they're complicated, right? 2 is fairly often seen, okay? They'll do more than simple subject, verb, object answers, or they'll answer with several sets of sentences in a row. It's a little bit more complex. The simple 1-word answer, a basic sentence, gets a 1. They can't respond, or they're incomprehensible, they get a 0. And the last one we look at is communication. If they are clear and easy to understand, they get a 3. We try to pretend that we try to assume that the listener is someone who doesn't understand non-native English speakers. For people who have been around non-native English speakers for a long time, this is tricky. I spent 10 years of my life hearing people from multiple countries speaking English. I do a pretty good job. So this is hard for me. I almost always understand people. So I have to sort of downgrade my answers, my scores a little bit. 2, they're pretty clear and understandable, but you kind of have to listen hard, or you have to make some interpretation based on what they said to understand it. 1 is difficult to understand or requires a lot of filling in. And a 0 is no response, or they're incomprehensible, or it's an unrelated response completely. So there are a lot of different types of questions and a lot of different content areas that we can cover in this test. It could be a personal identification question. It could be a question about health, or about family, or about parenting, about consumerism, about housing, recreation or entertainment, civics, community services, transportation or direction, weather or seasons, or education. One of the early on questions is, do you work? If they say yes, and we tell the computer that they work, then there could be additional questions on getting a job or on the job. We find these questions are much higher level and don't always elicit as much conversation. And so I've been advised that we don't have to say they have a job, even if they tell us they have a job. We can still go on with the other questions. That's what I was told. So what kinds of questions do we ask? Well, there's a lot of different kinds, and these are all mixed up. We ask about 6 sets of questions, so 6 different topics, and it'll be a mixture of these question types: warm up, photo description, entry item, yes, no, a choice question, personal expansion, general expansion, and elaboration. And I'm going to give you a little bit more. So a picture description would have a verbal prompt: tell me about this picture. I can accept the woman is watching TV. I can accept woman, TV. Those get different scores, but they're perfectly appropriate answers. Somebody who wanted to tell me a whole lot more might say, oh, that woman is watching TV on a flat screen, and it looks to me like she's watching, I don't know, CNN or ABC News. That would be a level 3 answer. Okay. An entry item. I usually get the news from, and then there are suggestions of what we might fill in here. I usually get the news from the newspaper. How about you? There are yes, no questions. Do you like to watch the news on TV? So you can see some of these are easier questions. Some of them are more difficult. The topic has remained the same. Do you like reading the news in English or in your language? What are some other ways you get the news? Personal expansion. General expansion is, do you think it's important to keep up with the news? Why or why not? And tell me more. Something like this is a very high level question. They wouldn't be asked this if they couldn't answer some of the more simple questions that came earlier on. Okay, it would be the last question in a series on the news. Or this next one might be a last question. Some people think the news in the US is unreliable, while others think the news in the US is accurate. What do you think? Tell me more. As you can see, these are not necessarily topics that you are going to be discussing with your next door neighbor over the fence, right? These are, it's conversational, sort of. It's more conversational, I would say, for the student who's listening than it is for the person giving the test, who is I'm only allowed to repeat a question 1 time so they can hear it 2 times. I can't explain a word. So if they don't understand accurate, I just have to say, try. What do you think? You know, I can't say other words. I'm supposed to follow the script. Yeah, so some people are naturally more chatty than others. The test is supposed to take all of this into account. So the valid scores range from an 88, which is what you get for someone who shows up for the test, I don't understand how you can get an 88 for showing up, but you do. You don't have to answer any question. I've actually given an 88. I mean, I've had an 88 given to a couple of people who couldn't say anything in English. They couldn't answer any questions. 88 was what they got. I myself try not to give tutors anyone at the lower levels, like a 7 or an 8. These lowest levels of students are very hard to communicate with unless you are a professional English as a second language teacher, or you speak their native language a little bit. However, the others are perfectly fair game. And one of the small issues with this test is the scores can go up quite a bit above 564, but the state of Pennsylvania doesn't recognize them above this number. So we could get a little bit more information about students at the higher levels than the state of Pennsylvania will allow us to check. So if somebody scores above this 564 level, we have to come up with an alternate test for them. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of the challenges and limitations of the Best Plus. Administrators are trained, scoring can still be subjective, right? It doesn't assess literacy at all. It's purely speaking and listening. Scores can be misleading. The test can actually favor one-word answers rather than people who are attempting to make more complex answers. If you're unfamiliar with the topic and you don't have anything to say about it, you're going to score possibly lower. And some of the sentence structures are not necessarily common in relationship to the questions they're asking. How about you? Doesn't always seem to apply to the topic at hand. There are some awkward questions and content. Some of it's a little bit dated. There aren't too many people these days who admit to watching TV. If you say this, it's fascinating. Non-native English speakers don't watch TV. They watch Netflix or YouTube, you know, all these other things, but TV, they'll say, no, I watch Netflix. Oh, okay. So it's fascinating to me, but there are some other things like that that have changed since 2016, changed enough so that people sort of look at me funny when I ask them some of these questions. There is some comparison of scores between students. If I'm doing multiple students in a row, I do start thinking, well, that person answered this way. This person's answering this way. We only have their scores to compare against each other when we're looking at the individual student. So we'll have a pre-test and a post-test, and we're looking for a gain there. Okay, so that's the end of Best Plus. As I said earlier, if they test out of Best Plus, we have a choice to give them the best literacy, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about now, or the TABE test. And this is really a judgment call, and it's a conversation I've been having lately again with our with the person who writes our learning plans. I tend to think that if a person has a college degree from their home country, they are literate, and then I will give them the TABE. There may be some times when that isn't the best choice. If their native language is Arabic and they have a college degree from an Arabic university, the literacy skills they have are different. The same may be true of some of the Asian character languages, but this is still the assumption that I've sort of gone on, and nobody has challenged me too much on that. There have been a few times I haven't made the right choice. But the best literacy is a short test. It's about an hour. Okay, that's short. Wait till you hear how long the tape is. The best plus can be as short as 7 minutes, even shorter if they say absolutely nothing. But I've had good scores, high scores with somebody that's only taken us maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So you can score really high and not talk very much. But the best literacy, it's a time test. They're given an hour. They're given a booklet. It was also developed by the Center for Applied Linguistics, CAL. It tests combined reading skills of reading and writing based on real life tasks. It's only available as a paper and pencil test. So until we could start meeting with students again during the pandemic, we weren't able to give this test. There was no other way we could give it but in person. It's an hour long. This is given to students who test out of the Best Plus, but who aren't ready for the tape. So maybe they don't have a high school diploma from their country, or they did just graduate from high school. Or they may have a language where their literacy skills are completely different. Let's see. The reading tasks range from things like circling dates on a calendar, reading price tags like the cost or the size of an item, finding phone numbers from a phone book, finding times on a printed schedule, choosing the best word choice in a short story, reading a short passage, reading signs, understanding hours of operation, reading appointment cards, prescriptions, medical information, reading newspaper ads or job listings. They also have to read the directions on the test. All we do is say, read the directions and do the things it tells you to do. You know, there's basically nothing else we can tell them about this. Then the writing tasks start with basic personal information that is found on forms, their name, sex, address, date of birth, today's date, and the signature. They're asked to write a check, to address an envelope, and then there's usually a writing prompt for a letter that's either formal or casual, and maybe both. So you can see this test is more out of date than the Best Plus. It takes a long time to get a test validated and put out there to the country. They've been working on an updated Best Literacy for at least 3 years. So I don't know where they are in the process. Hopefully in my lifetime it's finished. Yeah, but you know, for someone who can't write, this is very challenging. If you can't read, this is very challenging, right? But for those who read and write, it's too easy. So Best Literacy scores also give us, you know, there's also a range. Someone who is an advanced speaker with a college degree may score in this advanced range, in which case we can't use that as a pretest. And then we'd have to give them the tape anyway. I did an experiment with some of my advanced students one year because I wanted to see, was this a test that would be useful for these advanced students and keep me from having to test them on the tape. And based on a very small sample size that was not scientific, I decided no, not worth an extra hour of time. So the challenges and limitations for the Best Literacy is that it doesn't address speaking or listening at all. It's great for students with limited education, but it's really too low for well-educated or academic or professional students. Some of the content is dated. The scoring is rigid. Some of it is either they answered it completely correctly or they didn't answer it correctly at all. Some of those writing scores, there is some variability there, but some of it is just sort of right or wrong. So The tests that we give our advanced students for either our advanced ESLs or our adult basic education students is the one I'm going to spend a good bit of time talking about. We give them the test of adult basic education. The reading test is given to almost all of our students, except for those who come to us with only a math goal. And that math goal might be to get a particular score on a test, like a trade test, or someone who has passed all 3 parts of the GED other than the math test. They might come and say, I just need help to pass the math test of the GED. So we get a few people like that. Anyone who's going to take the GED will have to pass 4 parts: the reading and language arts test, a social studies test, a science test, and a math test. And the first 3 are very closely tied to reading. So the TABE doesn't have those other 2 subject area tests. It's just a generalized reading test. The math test is more than simple computation, but not quite at a GED level. Both of these were designed to be predicted so that success on these predicts or is somewhat predictive of success on the high school equivalency and the GED tests, okay, which is why it's given. All right, so a little bit more about the TABE. We call it the TABE, but it is the test of adult basic education. It's a nationally normed test that's given to assess foundational skills in reading and math. First, they take a timed placement test in a subject. The online program, basically it's online now, it's done on the computer, has been since before the pandemic. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. The online program determines the level exam that they'll be given based on their score on the placement test. The reading placement test is 35 minutes. The math placement test is 30 minutes. Students cannot fail. This simply helps determine what their level of study should probably be. As educators, we are all very aware that a one-day test, however long and rigorous it is not going to really tell us how well somebody reads or does math. But this is what we have, and this is what we have to use. The reading test, as I said, is usually computerized. There is a paper-based test available. Your student has to ask for it specifically. The paper-based is more difficult for us to score. We no longer have access to the scoring ourselves. We have to have it scanned by a scanner that is downtown. There's only one kind of scanner that's allowed to be used, and it scans directly to the DRC webs. I don't know. We can do it. It's harder. Okay. The computerized test focuses on academic reading and comprehension. It is multiple choice questions only. There are 2 parts. Test takers are given 50 minutes for each part. When the time is up for that part, the test closes automatically. If they finish prior to the end of the time, they can check their answers. There are 2 versions with 5 levels. There's an 11 version and a 12 version. The levels are advanced. I don't know. A, D, M, E, and L. L is low. E is, they actually do stand for something. Those are the levels. A is the highest, L is the lowest. L is only available in a paper-based form. The other 4 are available online. So if your student cannot cope with a computer and I have one who cannot, he's automatically given the L the first time and then maybe bumped up as he goes. Okay, what else? The math test is also computer-based. There is a paper version available. It focuses on word problems and daily math. There are multiple choice questions. No calculator is available. It covers most basic math, including algebra, estimation, and problem solving. I'm not going to show you sample questions. However, I've discovered that this website does give some sample questions, okay? You're welcome to share it with your student. I would not tell them they need to study for this test. It's not recommended. It's not necessary, okay? I don't want to stress them out by saying study for this test. That isn't our point. Our point is to see where they are right now when they come to us and guide them to improve their score so the next time they take it, it will be better, right? But if you do go and you look at the reading questions on these tests on this website, you'll see the passages are not 1 or 2 paragraphs. They are 5, 6, 7 paragraphs long. And there will be multiple questions associated with that one reading, okay? And it is a long, long test. Our American-born students generally take less time than the non-native speakers do. And I think it's partly, this is my opinion, partly that we are more socialized to trying once and saying, okay, I did my best, I'm done. Whereas in some cultures, it is far more important to use up all the time and to try over and over again until you've used up every last moment of your time, okay? So some people use the whole time, some people don't. I try to reassure them they don't need to. It's okay if they do. Anyway, is fine, right? So the test scores, we don't generally make this grade equivalent information available to students and tutors. It's here. We know what it is. Beginning literacy is generally under a 2nd grade level. And it goes up. High adult secondary is 11 or 12. Part of the reason we don't make this really public knowledge is that if I say to an adult that they're reading at a 2nd grade level, that makes them feel like they're a 2nd grader, and they're not. They're not. They have so much more experience and knowledge that can't be measured by the language available to somebody in a 2nd grade. So this is, you know, good for our reference in terms of looking at what kinds of materials they might need next, but we try never to refer to that level with a student. I think for them, it's sometimes frustrating to be told, oh, you did really well, you got a high intermediate, and they think, but I have a college degree. Well, yeah, but your college degree is not in English. And, you know, you're reading really well for somebody who didn't start their life reading English. I want to be really clear that especially now, in the past, the books we have provided tutors have not always been scaffolded to the tests, but they certainly are now. In the past year and a half, 2 years, every book we've given out has been intended to move them to the next level on one of those 2 scales of the test, okay? We're trying our best to make sure that what we give you will help them get to the next level. With ESL students, this is sometimes tricky because they come to us and they want to improve their speaking and listening skills. And they've tested out of the Best Plus test. And we give them a reading test. And they're like, but I don't need to improve my reading. And we're really stuck. In order to provide them with services, we need to give a test that the state will recognize. For most of them, that's going to be the TABE. And so we have to give them the TABE. They don't have to study to improve, they don't have to study reading and improve their reading just because they come to us, but that's what we have to test them on. And so we are trying to give reading textbooks to all students to help them improve their reading. As a language instructor myself, I would say there are 4 components to language: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. You're only going to get to a certain level of any language if all you're doing is oral and verbal. And I see Susan shaking her head, yes. The writing is going to solidify everything you learn to say, okay? And likewise, the reading is going to just help. You become a better writer when you read, you become a better reader when you write. It's all sort of a piece. And so I try to encourage everyone to do some reading, even if that isn't their goal. That's a lot of information that I just threw at you. So please, any questions you have, I would like to try to answer.
This is Partha. I have a question.
Yeah, Partha.
Reading and writing when you are doing Zoom classes is a little bit more challenging to structure.
Absolutely.
What do you suggest to do that on Zoom?
Yeah, so with reading, what we've been doing most recently is sending books through the mail to tutors and to students. So they each have a copy of the book. That way you can read aloud. They can read aloud. If you're doing it on Zoom, you can share your screen with them so you're looking at exactly the same thing. Writing is the hardest one to do. And my suggestion at this point for writing is encourage them to journal. Even if no one is looking at their journaling, if they are writing in English, they're practicing. And they could take pictures of what they write and send it to you. And then you could look at it later. I wouldn't so much encourage typing because that's a different skill. It's an additional skill, but handwriting is useful. Yeah. Was there a follow-up question?
No, thank you.
Okay. There are some other ways you can do writing online, Parth. I haven't had a whole lot of experience. I know there are whiteboards on Zoom. Some people use that for math. It's tricky to write on a whiteboard with a mouse. And most of us have mouse, have what, mices? Have mouses. Most of us use a mouse. So yeah, you're right, it's really hard.
This is Kathy. I'd like to comment on writing versus typing. I've been a gallery host at the American Democracy exhibit at the History Center. They have a beautifully written cursive part of the Declaration of Independence that's in large writing. Most kids can't read the cursive. It's understandable that, yes, there's some longer words like declaration, but kids can't read OUR in cursive because they're not taught it in school. So there is a difference in writing. putting it down, using your hands rather than just using your fingers on a keyboard or typewriter.
That's true. The other thing is that some letters are written differently in different countries.
Oh, yes, I know that.
So, you know, these are just, that's just the way it is. Any other questions?
I have a question
Kelly.
for one of my students. It's ABE. He keeps saying, how do I know when I'm ready to take the GED? And I don't know how to answer that to him.
So if he scored, this is a question you need to ask your coordinator. If he scored at a level 3 on the TABE in either reading or math, he is ready to take the GED Ready test. The GED Ready test is half the length of the GED test and will give us a predictive score for him that will say, yes, he's ready, he's almost ready, or no, he's not ready.
Okay, let me write this down. If he scores,
he needs to take the GED Ready if he scores at a 3
on TABE.
On TABE, and your coordinator will know that.
Okay, because I have his learning plan here, and it gives me the range, not a score of 3. It says 501 to 518.
Okay, 501 to 518. He is a 3. He is a 3. So I think you said Miguel.
Yeah.
Send Miguel an email and say, Miguel, Lisa said last night that at a 3, my student's ready to take the GED Ready. Can you get him set up for that?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that we only changed this summer. It used to be that coordinators weren't aware that at a level 3, we could recommend they do that GED Ready. So it's new information, but Miguel's aware. It's just hard to catch up with everybody.
Isn't that the truth?
Anything else? Carol, if you're talking, you have to unmute. No, not to me. You don't want to talk to me.
I was talking to my dog. She wants to go outside.
That's fine. You don't have to unmute to talk to your dog. That's fine. Anybody else?
I do want to say thank you. This has been really informative, and I'm so glad I was here. So thank you.
Well, you're really welcome. I've done this talk before, and I think it's really important for you folks to know what we're trying to measure, and also that we're trying to provide you with textbooks that will help your students make progress on the tests that we give them. You know, we don't just pick them out of the hat.
This is Jacqueline. Can you talk more about what scaffolding means and how the books we have are scaffolded to the GED?
So which books are you using right now, Jacqueline?
Journey.
Journey to Success. Journey to Success is written so that as you work through the levels of the book, it will take students from a lower level on the TABE to a higher level on the TABE. It's working towards the same skills. Let me
be more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Be more specific then. The journeys go from, is it 1 to 6?
Yeah.
And so at what do they all need to go through to this level 6?
No, I would say by level 3 or 4, they're probably getting a 3 or a 4 on the TABE.
Okay, so but they take the TABE as an assessment test, so you already know that when they come in, right?
Yeah, that's how we choose which level of the Journey to Success we give them.
Okay, so if they're at level, based on the test, they're on level 4.
For the battery pack that I used to have even
then let's say they get through level 4. At that point, is it assumed that they're going to be taking the GED ready test? And then you assess the books again?
So what would happen is if we assess students at least once a year or every 60 hours. If you think your students made significant progress and you've been working on the 4, you're finished with Journey to Success 4, and you think your student's really ready, say that to your coordinator. They can bring them in and test them again.
So, okay, so let's assume that happens and they do the GED ready test.
Right.
And so that test pinpoints where their weaknesses are. So at that point, do you then look at a different book, or do you just?
We probably would look at a different book then. Yes, we would look at the GED. There's a great big huge fat GED prep book that we generally give out that's 4 subjects. And the GED ready will tell you which pages in that book to use.
Okay. Then if a student is at, well, never mind. I think I understand what to do. I'll ask Laura.
It gets complicated, but the GED ready will give us page numbers in specific books that we can then send to you to use.
No, I do understand that.
Right.
And I do understand that correlation, but I'm using both 4 with one student and 6 with another. And they are, I mean, there's clearly some differences. And I think that one book is better for one student than the other. But I thought 4 would be too easy, but we're not ready to take the test. So I guess at that point, it's just a judgment call about how you go about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I would talk with your coordinator or call Christina.
Laurel.
Yeah. Talk to Laurel or Christina, who's the education specialist.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
This is Partha again. I have a quick practical question.
Yeah.
The person I teach has sometimes a lot of trouble with Zoom, and many times we had to cancel the session. When she has her husband or kid at home, they help her. When we were in person, I was giving her computer lessons too. But now, since it is all remote, I'm not able to do that. And
So
she gets frustrated and I get frustrated sometimes.
Right. Sure. We do have available something called North Star Literacy, which is I'm not the best person to talk to about it. It is a digital literacy online program, and we can get her signed up for that and get you trained to help her with it. It's just rolled out in the last couple of
that'll
months.
be great if you could do that. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, let me do that, Parth. If you're able, information about our November tutor conference will be coming to you shortly. At that November, wait a minute. No, I'll find out. I don't want to misspeak. But I will make a note to send information about North Star to you, Parth. And if anybody else has someone who's facing literacy issues, digital literacy issues, let your coordinator know, because this is a new resource we have available. I'm just not quite sure how to tell you to get your student involved with it. Anything else?
This is Roberta.
Yeah, Roberta.
The test that the ESL student gets is listening and speaking.
Yeah.
But then we have a set of things that we're supposed to accomplish with them, like they have to learn how to tell time, they have to learn all the coins, they have to read and write the names of the week, but they're never tested on that?
Those are general literacy questions. We don't test specifically on those things. No.
Okay.
Those are things that come up on the best literacy test.
It's just to spell Wednesday for you, or Tuesday, or?
No, No, we wouldn't ask that question. That just isn't part of what our testing is based on.
But that's the kind of thing that we're supposed to check off and date that she knows how to do this.
Yeah, that was, yes.
That's a little confusing because I spend lots of time doing that. And maybe I should spend more time talking and listening and speaking.
It's challenging, Roberta. It's really hard to.
The test.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are very useful skills for someone to be able to do, right?
Yes, right.
Let's be frank. I think your student needs to know that stuff.
Yes, yes.
Right. We aren't going to test them on it, but if they go somewhere, they need to know that stuff, right? So yes, there's a question, but the state doesn't care if they can do that.
Okay.
I think that's the short answer. I'm sorry. I don't have.
I got it. Yeah.
I would say something also that I took the training 2 years ago. Before when it was basically longer, the 6 hours was for everyone, and then it was 3 hours just for me to take training for ABE. Well, your question, it brings up that in the general discussion, I mean, I saw, they had a list of words and phrases that are basically essential. Like, I would understand you're not going to test someone that they understand the words for sale or explosive, but they're words and phrases that we absolutely need to understand.
Yeah, that's right.
You need to read, even if you want to learn to speak and listen. You need to know if you come across something that says explosive on it, you need to understand what that means.
Anything else?
I have another question.
Sure,
Sorry. The TABE test. Am I correct in remembering they don't get to use a calculator on it?
No.
Okay. Do they get to use a calculator on the GED?
One part of the GED, they have access to an online calculator. They cannot use their phone. They cannot use a handheld calculator. So part of the GED, part of what we ask them to do before we even give them the GED ready is do the GED calculator tutorial that GED.com has available on their website.
Okay, so I have a student who was just retested, and I was given this book to use with her. Has one page on multiplication. She does not know any of her multiplication facts past 2. So I went back to this book.
Right.
We're using this because it has more pages. But I guess my question is, how much should I concentrate on her memorizing those math facts? Because she's getting very frustrated.
There's a foundation book that is also available that has more of that kind of detail. So
yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Jacqueline. You're right. There are other books out there. She needs to learn her facts, I would say, but I would not make that be what stops her from continuing to work on her math. I think it's worth calling Christina into.
I have emails into Christina, and I think she's looking for one of the books that she referred to for me. She thinks there's one available, so I'm waiting. But I just, because I see her frustrated.
Right. The problem is that she will only be able to make progress to a certain point if she doesn't know those facts. There are other things she can do with math,
right,
without knowing those facts. So maybe you want to focus on some of those things and intersperse with learning, with coming back to the facts.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but I just wanted to be sure how much of it is on the test and whether she could use a calculator or not. You're talking to a former elementary school teacher. I know she needs to know those math
Yeah,
facts.
you know what I'm saying, Kelly. Yeah, you know, you can look at the GED.com website
Okay.
yourself. I was just looking at it today. I can't answer the question. I'm sorry. She needs to know the facts, but there are
That's
other
what I
things.
think, but okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. We're losing people. Anybody else before I say goodnight? I'm happy to see people, so I'm happy to talk to you. I mean, our son did come for dinner tonight, so that was nice, but I'm really tired of my room.
Thank you. This has been most helpful.
You're really welcome. You're very welcome. I'm gonna send you guys all just a follow-up thank you email. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will get this posted. The recording will end up on YouTube. It'll take a few days, but it will be there. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good
Okay,
evening.
thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.